There were no greater enigmas in all the world than tektites. The crystals had been discovered over 1,000 years ago under the rule of Ve, the first empress of the north. Yet their majesty had only grown since then. Tektite crystals could not be created or replicated. They would appear randomly in places they had not been for centuries. Dragons craved them to bolster their size, and southerners coveted them to bolster their talents. They could be used in medicines, contraceptives, steroids, and potions. And tektites were the sources of power for every arcana's mystical properties, though even the wisest of men knew not how or why. I'll never forget the first time I saw Atlantis as a kid. Every time I thought it was as cool as it was gonna get, it just kept getting cooler. I legitimately think it was the first real drama that I interacted with as a kid. I mean, aside from Tommy trying to feed his brother to monkeys and Gary selling out SpongeBob for a cookie, I don't think there will be another betrayal that sticks with me as much as Rourke turning on the crew and the Atlanteans. The ups and downs of that movie probably set in motion my whole writing outlook concerning fiction, and now I get the privilege of yapping about it. This channel will be dedicated to exploring the fictions that stand out as the roots and inspirations for my own fantasy novel series, Blood of One's Blood. Because I am a visual learner and I completely am a sucker for lore, I've actually commissioned dozens of beautiful pieces of artwork from amazingly talented, non-AI real artists. And you can find continued posts about them on my Instagram and TikTok if you really like what you see here. And as for all of my books, you can find them on my website, savagebooks.net. It's only through the sales of these books and your guys' amazing support that I'm able to commission my art and make these videos, so please head on over and purchase a copy if you can. All links will be in the description. But considering this video, I think as writers, we have a responsibility to not only talk about our work, but the giants whose shoulders on which we stand on. And as I've discussed on my main channel at length, Atlantis is definitely a giant of my past. The adventure itself is amazing and beautiful, and then we actually get to Atlantis, and the story explodes afterwards. We meet this ancient, advanced progenitor race, and I know this isn't going to matter to a lot of people, but they were brown. And as a young black kid, that was super cool to me, and it's still super cool to me as a near 30-year-old black man. I know that the Atlanteans aren't supposed to be African, but so often we either have advanced civilizations be white in fantasy, or tribal civilizations be brown. So it was just really cool to see this group of mystical super people have a complexion that kind of resembled mine. This really inspired my perception of what fantasy could look like. It didn't just have to be old Europeans in stone castles. Fantasy can be whatever you want and can be in whatever setting you want. So I made some of the most powerful, advanced, and mystic people across my books brown. They're the Regiri, and they're pretty much exactly based off of Indians, and their culture is intricately tied into another huge inspiration from Atlantis, crystals. The crystals across my books are called tektites, and like those of Atlantis, their origins are shrouded in mystery. I thought it was super cool that the Atlanteans had crystals just part of their culture. They wore them every day, they revered them, and so I took that too. Tektites are crystals that have a wide variety of benefits. They can be crushed down into all sorts of medicines, steroids, and potions, but their most famous use is increasing people's skill with their talents or superpowers. The longer you have a tektite crystal worn on you, the more powerful you become. And this has led to both the commoners and the nobility to highly value tektites, all the way up to the royalty who routinely affix them to their crowns and raiments. But to have the crystals truly appear as not just part of the culture but also mystical, they had to have some sort of power themselves. Atlantis knew this and used world building to merge the crystals with technology.
Half turn right, quarter turn back, keep your hand on the pad.
I pretty much lost my mind when the Atlanteans started flying in fish cars and shooting laser beams. And yes, that inspired me again. Throughout my books, you will see ancient artifacts called arcana. These are items that have been fused with those tektite crystals that we talked about before. These items can be anything from swords to crowns, and they each come with their own individual power. But like any proper ancient technology, no one knows how to actually make an arcana. They can only be found in the ruins of ancient Senantori civilizations or taken from someone else. That's what many wars and conflicts throughout my books boil down to, taking resources. And yes, that comes from Atlantis as well. I think a huge part of that movie is railing against war and colonialism and greed.
You win. You're wiping out an entire civilization, but hey, you'll be rich.
The Atlanteans invited Milo and the other adventurers to stay with them, and in return they had their entire way of life endangered. I think for a fiction aimed at kids to be so blatant in its depiction of violence and the harms of greed is what endeared it to me so much. Because even as a kid, I felt the fiction was taking me seriously. And that is what I try to do in my books. Sure, I want to take you on a ride as a reader. It's supposed to be entertaining, but I think that ride should always be through the ups and downs of a real message that hopefully sticks with you after you're finished. Anyway, thanks for geeking out with me, and please, if you can, head on over to savagebooks.net to check out my books for yourself. As always, it was a pleasure, and I will talk to you all again soon.